Good Vach. I'm now going to record Daf Kuf Zayin, Shabbos Daf Kuf Zayin. Before I begin, I just want to speak something out. I hope it's true. There were two kashas. One kasha was regarding Kaisav Shtei Oisius. Rashi says Yechayv. Rashi says Yechayv if you Kaisav Shtei Oisius, even if the two Oisius are the same and it doesn't make a word, like two olives, Yechayv on. The Rambam Shita is you're only chayiv on two letters that are the same if the two letters are a word, like gag or chach or zaz. So the question, let's say, is where did the Rambam get this from? The answer is because the Gemara says Shem Mishimen. So Shem Mishimen sounds like you're only chayiv if it's actually a word, like Shem. Rashi Shita, on the other hand, would be that it's true, but the Achronim say that if you wanted to write a word like Shimon, then you're only chayiv if you wrote a word like Shem. But if you actually wanted to write two letters, so you're chayiv on any two letters, even if it's not a word. But if you intended to write a word, you're chayiv even if you write a smaller word, but it has to be a word. So the question is, l'chayra, when they put letters on the boards of the Mishkan, they could put two olives, where they weren't writing any words. So l'chayra, Rashi should be right. Where did the Rambam or where did the Gemara get this idea that you're only chayiv if you write a word? Only if the two letters are the same, make a word. That's one kasha. Another kasha is, why is it that you're chayiv on two letters? For instance, let's say two olives. But when they made a marking on a board, it also indicated whether the board was going to go on the north wall, the west wall, or the south wall. So even one mark on a board was an indication of where it should go. So why dafka does it have to be two Isis, which tells me which two boards go together? Okay, so when you have two Isis, it tells us which two boards go together. Very good. But even one mark on a board also tells us something. It tells us which of the walls it goes on. I'm not sure. I think the answer is that we learned the Lamitas Malachas from the Malachas you needed for Binyan HaMishkan. But I don't think we learned the Shiurim from the Mishkan. For instance, if you're kaitzer teichen ki gregeris, you're chayiv for a gregeris. And in the Mishkan Lavdavka, they were kaitzer teichen a gregeris. The Malacha, kaitzer and teichen, existed in the Mishkan. The Chachma Yisrael told us a shir choshev is a gregeris. Or let's say, we learned that, let's say, bleaching or spinning or combing wool was twice kisit kaful. In the Mishkan Lavdavka, that they did spinning kisit kaful, or Lavdavka, they did combing kisit kaful. They did combing, they did bleaching, they did spinning. The Chum gave us the shear. So consequently, that might answer both kashas. According to the Rambam felt, based on the Gemara, and the Gemara felt that the only chayiv, a chshivas of writing, is only when you write a word. Just I'm writing two letters is not called a chshivas, even though in the Mishkan they may have written two letters, because sometimes the shir will be less than what they did in the Mishkan, sometimes the shir will be more than what they did in the Mishkan. But we learned the malacha from the Mishkan. And that's the reason why you're only chayiv on two letters and not one letter, even though one letter did tell you where in the Mishkan this board belongs. So we're up to Kuf Zayin Amid Aleph on top. Omer Rab Abba, Omer Rab Chia Bar Ashi, Omer Rab, Nichnas Aloi Tzipor Tachas Knafav, Yoshev Meshamra Ad Shetechshech. If a bird went under a person's jacket and it can't get out, the person can stay there and keep the bird under his jacket until nighttime. It's not called Seida, because the bird got caught by itself. Moshe Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, so Rav Nachman Yitzchak asked the kasha, we learned in the Mishnah, Yoshev Rishon Ala Pesach Umil Ohu. If a person blocks the doorway so that the deer can't get out, and the second person sits beside him, even though the first person got up and left, the first person was chai for tzeid, and the second one is poter. Is my law, would you not say it's poter avaloser? So even though the deer was already trapped, but maintaining the trap is an issa derabbanan, where it says no, it's poter and mutter. For the second one, it's poter and mutter. Hochinami mistaver, and this is logical because Mediktani Sefer, the Mishnah gives a mashal, Moshe Daimel, Lenoil is Beisa, L'Shaimroi, V'nim Tzvi Shamr B'Taychoi. If the door was closed and there was a deer inside, then somebody else goes and locks the door. The second one is Mechal de Poter Mutter. So the second one is Poter Mutter because the deer was already trapped. Ishmamino from the mashal, that the same thing as the nimshal, that the second person who blocks the entranceway, it's poter muter, because he's only maintaining the tzeda, and the bird in your jacket, even if you stay like that until Motzei Shabbos, you're just maintaining the tzeda, the bird got caught by itself. The exact case of the guy in the door is machlokes. The Rishash and others say Pshat is like this. Let's say a deer would need 51% of the entrance to get out, and Mr. A is blocking 50%, so the deer can't get out. Mr. B now blocks the other 50%, so even when Mr. A gets up, Mr. B is not chayiv, because even though he's the one who remains blocking the deer's exit, but the deer was already trapped. But it's mashma from that what happens if Mr. A and Mr. B would get up, and then Mr. B would sit down, then Mr. B would be chayiv. Because when Mr. A and Mr. B got up, the deer now could get out. When Mr. B sits down, he's the one that's trapping it. But others argue and say, the Magen Avram says, that since the deer was already inside the house, and since the deer was already trapped before, so therefore, even if both of them get up, and then Mr. B sits down, he's only trapping a deer which was already trapped. The previous discussion is just packaged differently. Ikka the Amri, some say Amr of Nachman by Yitzchak. Afanan Nami Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah that maintaining the bird in your jacket is not considered trapping, because it says Afpi Shamar Arishon V'Holachloi Arishon Chai V'Sheni Potter. Even though Mr. A walks away from the doorway, Mr. B remains, Mr. B is still Potter. My love, Potter and Mutter. Mistama means that maintaining a tzeda is Potter and Mutter. More says, Loi, no, it could be it's Potter Avil Osir. Mr. B maybe is Potter Avil Osir. The Gemara dismisses that and says, Ha Mediktani Seifa, since it says at the end of the Mishnah, Holamaza Daimel L'Noyel is Beisai L'Shaimroi V'Nimtza Tzvi Shamar B'Soichai, that Mr. B is similar to somebody locking a door, which the door had already been closed, so the person locking the door really hasn't done Seidah. So Miklal de Potter and Mutter, the same thing as Mr. B, it's Potter and Mutter, so Shema Mina, so we're 100% in agreement here. Mr. B is Potter and Mutter, and a person that a bird went under his jacket and got caught there, just sitting there and keeping it like that without getting up in order to release it, is not really considered Seidah. He didn't do any Masat Seidah. Amar Shmuel Kol P'tur the Shabbos Potter Avaloser. All the cases where it says Potter and Shabbos, there's an Isser Derabanan. Levar Ma'an Itlas, except for 3 cases, the Potter and Mutter. Chada is Ha. One case is Mr. B in the doorway is Potter and Mutter. Umimai Hari knows Potter and Mutter, as we said already twice. Viktani Seif, because the Mishnah says, somebody locks the door of a house who, now that he's locking it, so the deer is now inside, but it was inside already before and the door was closed. So you haven't really done anything. So maintaining Tzeidah is not considered Tzeidah. B'yidach, a second case is Amefis Mursa b'Shabbos. If somebody bursts a pus pimple on Shabbos, Im Lasas Lo Peh, if he wants the fluid to go out and air to come in, so it's a Pesach Lachnas Laitzi, so you're chayiv, either it's called Baina or it's called Tikkun Keli. The issue is whether there is Baina on a human being, but many have written that it says by Kadosh Baruch Hu, Vayiven es Atzela, he built the rib or the side or the part that he took from Adam into Chava. So you see there's Vayiven to build even on a human being. So it's Baina or it's Tikkun Keli. But him loitzim alecha, but if his intention is merely for the fluid to go out, but it's not his intention that air should go in, then you're Potter. How do you know that it's Potter and Mutter? Because the Tanah, there's a Mishnah later, Machat Shal Yad, if you have a sewing needle, which is a Keli Shem Lachte Le'Iser, so Litel Ba'is HaKaitz, you're not to use it to take a thorn out of your finger, let's say. So even though when you take out the thorn you make no hole, but since the purpose is only for the splinter to go out, not for air to go in, so therefore it's Potter and Mutter. It would have been an Isser Derabanan, but because you have Tsar, so the Rabbanan were even Mater at Lekatchila. And the same with the pus pimple. It should have been an Isser Derabanan if the Pesach was only Lahaitzi but not Lahachnis, but B'tzar, it's Potter and Mutter. V'yidach, in the third case, is Atzad Nachash. If you catch a snake b'Shabbos, if you're catching it because you don't want it to bite you, it's not talking about pikuch nefesh. Pikuch nefesh, you can do anything. But you just don't want it to bite you, so then you're potter. and in l'refuah, but if you need the snake because it has some ingredient in it which you can use l'refuah, then you're chayiv, because then it's seder. And how do you know that it's poter or muter? If you're catching it, it shouldn't bite you. The Tanakh, we learned the Mishnah, koifin ka'ora al haner b'shvil shaloi te'echoiz b'kaira. You're allowed to put a bowl over a nair so that the flame shouldn't set on fire the beam, the ceiling beam. By the way, you can only be koifit as long as you leave some space for air to get in, otherwise you'll be mechaber. You also can put a keli on top of a child's dirt, a waste, b'shabes, val akrav shaloi tishach, or on a scorpion it shouldn't bite. So you see that since you don't really need to catch the scorpion, so therefore it would only be an Isser Derabanan, and since you're worried about it biting you, so the Rabbanan were makel that there's not even an Isser Derabanan. So you see whether it's catching scorpions, which are even more dangerous than snakes, or catching snakes, we're not even talking about Pikuach Nefesh, but still it's a Malach Shen Tzirich L'Gufa, because according to Reb Shimon, you don't really need it. So it should still be an Isser Derabanan, but if it's Shalai Yishchanu, if it shouldn't bite you, the Rabbanan were makel. So these are three cases where poter is poter and muter. So the Mishnah Shmeina Shrotzim, there are 8 Shrotzim listed Amurim B'Tayr in Parsha Shmini, that these Shmeina Shrotzim, if you touch them, the Nevel is Metami B'Maga. Sa'atzadan, if you catch them, so you're Chayiv on Shabbos, V'achayvel B'han Chayiv, and if you bruise them, you're Chayiv. Because when you bruise them, the blood goes to the surface under the skin, and that is a day, and one day, some of the Rishonim say, that's called Natilas Neshama. You've removed blood, which is Neshama, which is life, from the interior of the sheretz to the surface, and it's that skin that's holding it back from exiting. And some say that it's Tzaiveya, because we find by the Oris Elim Adamim, they bruised the rams in order to cause the hides to turn red. The Rambam says it's a malacha of dash, mefarik. You're extracting the blood from within its container, from within the sheretz, and bringing it to the surface. But let's go with Natilas Neshama. Ushar shkotzim ramasim, other crawling things, achayvel bam, if you bruise them, you're poter. Why? Because these 8 shrotzim, according to Rabbi Yochanan, have a skin which retains the blood beneath the skin, and therefore it's called Natilas Neshama. Other shrotzim don't really have skins, or they're very thin. So if the blood really was going to go out, it would have gone through the skin. And if it didn't go out, it's just going to go quickly back to be absorbed into the body. It's not considered, the temporariness of it makes it not Natilas Neshama. Hatzadan, if you catch those other shkotzim or mosim l'tzayrich, you need them because they have some medicinal purposes, you're chayiv. Shalai l'tzayrich, but if you don't need them, you are poter. And l'chayr, this poter is poter muter, because they're bothering you, they're mitzar you. Chayiv oif shebershusai hatzadan poter, chayiv oif that you have in your possession, they're already trapped. So if you catch it, you're poter because they're already trapped from before. But if you injure, if you bruise any chaya or oif, you're chaya because they have an or. Because they have an or, the blood gathers under the or, and that's called natilas neshama. You've extracted blood from within the creature, and it has gathered under the skin. Midiktani achayvel bem chayiv. Since the Mishnah says that all shmeina shrotzim, if you bruise them, you're chayiv. Meklal deislu or. That means that they have a distinct and separate or which retains the blood from exiting, and therefore you're chayiv for natilas neshama. Mantan, who's the Tana that the Shmeina Shrotzim have distinct and separate oiros? Omar Shmuel says, Rabbi Yochanan Manuri, it's Rabbi Yochanan Manuri. The Tanan, there's a Mishnah Chul, Rabbi Yochanan Manuri Omer, Shmeina Shrotzim yesh lahem oiros. That all 8 Shrotzim have an or, which is distinct and separate from its flesh, and therefore only the flesh of a sheretz is Matambi B'maga, but the or is distinct and separate. So Rabbi Yochanan Manuri holds 8 for 8. All 8 Shrotzim, the or is separate from the basar. The basar of sheretz is tamei and not or. And because the or is separate from the basar, the or has the capacity to retain dam under it, so you're chayav for natilas neshama when there's a bruise. Rabba bar Rav Huna Amar Rav Afil Tamer Rabbanan. The Rabbanan could agree with Rabbi Yochanan that for chayvel b'Shabbos you're chayav on all shmeina shrotzim, because atkam lepligi Rabbanan led Rabbi Yochanan Manuri elin yantumim. The Rabbanan argue that only 4 of the shrotzim have a separate or that is not metame like the basar, and 4 other of the shrotzim, the or is metame like basar. So they're arguing ligabi tumah. The chsiv, because there's a pasuk, exeres hakosiv, eila ha, mitahei hayadu ha tameim, l'rabbi shayresem kipsorim. That 4 of the 4 of the shrotzim listed amongst the Shreina shrotzim, the or is metame like basar, and other oirs are not metame like basar. So the gabi tuma, the rabbanon are mechalik. Aval b'linyan Shabbos, afilu rabbanon maida. But the gabi Shabbos, the rabbanon would be maida to Rabbi Yochanan Menuri that all shmeina shrotzim, the blood can gather under the skin, and therefore you'll be chayiv for chayvel 8 for 8. So it's not only Rabbi Yochanan Menuri holds that 8 for 8, the gabi tuma, the or is separate from basar. 8 for 8, you're chayv and chayvel. But even the Rabbanon hold the Gabi Tumah, it's 4 versus 4. But the Gabi Shabbos, the Rabbanon will agree to Rabbi Yochanan Menuri that all 8 can retain dam under their skin, and you'll be chayiv for bruising. So we'll record this part first.